Hey there, you can support the podcast by downloading, sharing, or checking with my favorite hiking gear at justhike.com. Let's hit the trail. Welcome to the Just Hyke Podcast. Today, I'm honored to introduce a very special guest, someone whose work has been invaluable to me and countless others who love the Lone Star Hiking Trail. Karen Borski Somers is the author of the Lone Star Hiking Trail Guidebook, which is my go-to resource for trail knowledge alongside with the club website. Her book has taught me about the trail, and it remains the trusted guide that I return to again and again. Karen is a native of Spring, Texas, with an incredible background. She studied biomedical engineering at Texas A&M and spent 22 years working with NASA contractors before shifting gears to homeschool her kids. But her heart has always been on the trail. She solo thru-hiked the entire Appalachian Trail, and in 2004, her and her husband Andy completed the Pacific Crest Trail together. Her trail name is Nakona, which means wanderer, and that's fitting because she has logged more than 9,000 trail miles across 36 states and has even cycled 4,400 miles across the U.S. Karen currently lives in northern Alabama with her husband, 2 daughters, and their hiking Sheltie, and are continuing her adventures both on and off the trail. Please join me in welcoming author, long-distance hiker, and true trailblazer, Karen Borski Somers. I know when I first started discovering the Lone Star Hiking Trail for myself, I got a copy of your guidebook, and it really helped a lot because the Lone Star Hiking Trail seems to be, it's hidden, but it's not really hidden. Like it's right there, but people don't know it's there.
Right.
Right. And we're getting better with signage for the Lone Star Hiking Trail. That when people are driving down some of the major roads, they actually see a trailhead sign. Whereas before they were just these little signposts in the woods, and you would never know that there's a trailhead there unless you were specifically looking for it.
Right.
Right. And so I found your guidebook was really helpful. Thank you so much for writing it. I appreciate you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, that was one of the big reasons I wrote it, was because it seemed like the first, 5 years I was out there day hiking and overnight camping, and then I've eventually did a thru hike, but that it was so obscure and so little used in places that I was afraid it was just going to drift away and be forgotten.
Right.
And it was right there in my backyard. And I thought, it's been here a while. It would be a shame to lose it because no one cares about it. No one hikes on it. That was my motivation we can talk more about that, but I was worried that it was going to get overgrown and gone.
Right. Well, and that's my motivation too. And I'm glad that you said that. You know, my motivation is twofold. One is to get women out there and hike and enjoy the outdoors and have the healing benefits of nature and being outside and, all the benefits that it encompasses. But then on the other hand, it's like, if nobody goes on these trails, it's just going to get eaten up by development.
Yeah.
I would rather have more people on the trails and lots of people coming out for the club hikes or the group hikes or whatever it is, and just getting out there and enjoying getting those feet on the ground and getting them out there on the trails, so that when development does come along, there's a bunch of us who are going to say, hang on, no, we want this trail.
That's right.
And so thank you for making that guidebook to help show us the way for that.
I talked, during writing the book, and then in my second edition quite a bit, I talked with the chief Forest Service guy in charge. I can't remember his exact title, but at one point he said there was some talk at that point about turning part of the Lone Star Trail into a biking trail for bicycle, and we were fighting against that. A couple of us from the Sierra Club and me. Anyway, I called him to tell him, I wrote the book and I have some comments. I'd like to talk about it, why it's a special trail and why it's important that it's just foot traffic only. And he said, well, I'm glad to hear from you. I wish I heard from more hikers. The problem we have is I hear from a lot of ATV people. I hear from a lot of hunters. I never hear from hikers. Right. So that was, at least, I know there's some people who hike on it, but it doesn't seem like it's very many. And we have to serve the users of the forest. So if the users are mostly these other people and they want this, then I'm going to be listening to them more. So that was another thing that struck me was, like you just said, the more people who like the trail, who get out on it, whether they're walking or running, I don't care. They love it. They want it to stay there. They'll speak up to save it if something comes along to threaten it.
I agree with you. So I think hikers in general are kind of they're a quieter breed, right? We're not the A-type personality who's out there running around making a lot of noise. We're walking quietly through the woods. So it's understandable that, they're not going to hear from a good majority of us, unless, of course, they threaten to take away some of our favorite trailheads. So I think we'll stand out then. But that poses such an interesting idea. It's like, how would we reach out and say, hey, you know what, we're on the trail too, and we really enjoy being able to use it. So I don't know how to approach the Forest Service and say, hey, we really want to be here.
Yeah.
Any ideas other than just calling them up and saying, hey, we really like the trail?
I know that there's the Sam Houston Trails Coalition, and I know that there's a group of people with the Lone Star Trail Hiking Club who get together for group hikes. So there's that group who are dedicated to the trail.
Mm-hmm. And they do trail maintenance also.
Trail maintenance, all the maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess with those groups, between the three of them, that would be your base to go and say, if we need to get advocacy of some kind, it would have to come from those people. So
yeah, that's a good avenue for people. We'll definitely, I'll start promoting that. If you want these trails to stay around, try to get involved, reach out, stay in touch, like the Facebook pages, come on club hikes, things like that.
And even if you can't give a lot of money, give a little bit so you can just be plugged in.
I know with the Lone Star Hiking Trail Club, it's just $20 a year to become a member. And that helps pay for a little bit of gas, maybe some work gloves here and there, whatever it is. It doesn't, it's not a whole lot, but it gives you, a bit of a in, and then you can get notified of certain things. I know. Yeah.
There's a lot of development in that area. I'm stunned at how many people have moved into around Montgomery and in Spring, Tomball, where I grew up. I mean, that whole area has completely changed.
Yes.
It's overwhelming when I'm over there. So I do worry about it becoming overused. But on the other hand, you have to have that advocacy base to retain it too when the development threatens it. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword that way. But
so what drove you to, create the book? You said that it was an obscure trail. Some of it was getting overgrown. How do you even start writing a guidebook? And had you ever written a guidebook before?
I had not.
No.
I don't have a background in publishing books or writing other than the fact that I like to keep a journal growing up. And I did keep online journals when I was through hiking. The Appalachian Trail was my first one. I kept a daily journal on the internet, and that was a new thing back then. That was in 1998. So it was pretty unique at that time.
Awesome.
So anyway, I did write a lot, and I had a habit of writing every day. So I guess I was sitting around between hikes. I had finished the AT and the PCT, and then we had already bicycled across the country, and we were planning to do, we didn't know what, maybe the Continental Divide Trail, maybe get jobs and settle down. But I was kind of between gigs, so to speak. I was looking around for my next thing, and I was applying for jobs too at that time because it was about time to get back to work and get serious about earning my keep again. But I was living with my mom. I had to have my wisdom teeth out. I remember being in her house recuperating and just looking through options in the area to get out for a day hike. And that was kind of it. I was familiar with the trail. So I went out for a day hike, and it was overgrown and it looked little used. The trailhead was hard to find. I was up and down that Richards section. That first, I couldn't find exactly where to park, and I didn't know what part of the trail I was on. And I just thought, man, this little trail needs a guidebook in the worst way.
Right.
So I went home and thought about that. And I thought, I could write a little guidebook to this. There was a little internet-based guidebook, a little printout that you could get that was pretty good, but it was a little outdated and it didn't tell you a lot about the water or the parking situation. Anyway, I thought about it and I decided, I think I could do that. So it would be a fun project to try. But I really didn't know what I was getting into. So I started thinking about how you would do it. I talked to a friend of mine who's a writer, Marcus Wolf. he'd written a guidebook already. And he said he just took a measuring wheel and he pushed it along the trail and he recorded his notes in a notebook. Well, I decided to just do it on a tape recorder, old-fashioned tape recorder as I walked. I would talk as I walked and say what I saw and make note of the mileage on the wheel. And when it would turn over, I would reset it. And I just actually manually measured the mile markers. I mapped it as I want. I carried a little GPS like on my shoulder that I would run continuously. This unit, it would drop cookies. And so I had a little path that I had mapped out. I kind of thought about those angles, and then I got home and I got busy. Actually got a job pretty quickly, went back to work. And I kind of sat on that data for probably 6 months before I did anything. And then very slowly I started transcribing my notes from the audio tapes and getting a written log, and then over the next year, putting all that together into a book. I made an old-fashioned outline, what kind of information would I like to see, and I looked at different guidebooks that were my favorite books to see what topics they covered and what I would like to see if I could write my own book. And at that point, it was still sort of a pipe dream. I really didn't think it would become an actual book.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got it all together, and because I didn't have any history with publishing, I decided on my own that I would have to just write the whole thing and then just submit it to a publisher as a whole book.
Right, yeah.
'Cause I figured
And that was before self-publishing, wasn't it?
it was.
Yeah, because now you can spit out your own guidebook in
That's
30
right.
minutes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I sent it off and I got busy having my first child. So I had a daughter and I had sent the books off right before I had her. I took their addresses and I just mailed them a copy with a
Oh,
little
cool.
cover letter, and I waited. Nothing happened for a year almost. And suddenly one day I had forgotten about the book and thought it wasn't ever going to happen. I got a call from Wilderness Press.
Oh, wow.
They're now Keen Publications. They may even have a new name now. But anyway, they called me and said they wanted to publish it. So that's how it happened.
That's very neat. So how long ago was that? Like, when was the first publication?
That would be, so 2006 was when I hiked it. Is that right? Yeah, 2006.
Okay.
And I think we got published in 2009 eventually.
Wow. Okay.
It took me a year and a half or so to write it. And like I said, a year for them to get back to me, and then another couple of months of editing and processing before it actually came
Right.
out. And then I
Wow.
did a second edition in 2019. So 10 years later, I did a second update.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. That's so
Yeah.
cool. That's such an exciting process to go through.
It was a little adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Now you've gone on lots of other adventures. Tell me about the Appalachian Trail and what prompted you to do that. And did you do that with anybody or did you go on your own?
I did it on my own solo in 1998. I was 26 years old. I did not have a background. I didn't grow up backpacking. We went camping a couple of times growing up, but my family, my dad was especially outdoorsy. My dad was a hunter and he would take us deer hunting in Texas,
Right. Yeah.
fishing. We'd walk around in the woods a lot. He was always building new trails at his hunting camp and projects outside. We just grew up kind of running around in the woods behind our house too. I always had a fascination with nature, animals, wilderness, just something intrinsically that I grew up loving. But as far as backpacking, I thought, would that be cool to try one day? But it wasn't something I'd ever really done. I was on a business trip to Baltimore. I was in the airport and I didn't have a book to read on the plane or while I was waiting. So I went in the little bookstore at the airport and I just had a few minutes to grab something. And instead of grabbing a magazine, I grabbed a book, and I actually got it off the shelf today just to try to remember who wrote it. But it's by Gene Deeds, and it's called There Are Mountains to Climb. I'll hold it up.
Oh, look at how cool.
This is the actual book I picked
I
up.
love that.
Yeah, and it was about a single woman who, I think she'd been a mom, and it's been years since I've read it, probably since then. I had been at my job at NASA, a young engineer in the workforce for about 5 years.
Yeah.
I guess I was somewhat worried that if I didn't do something with myself, I would just end up working in an office and living in the suburbs or in a city the rest of my life. And
Yes.
I worried about that for myself. I thought, no, you're
Yeah.
young, you're not attached right now. All you can do right now is get out for a week, maybe 2 weeks on vacation. And that was in the back of my head anyway, going into this period of my life. So I picked up this book and I got on the plane and I just thought, I love mountains, I love hiking, so I'll just read this little book and see what it's about. I really got maybe 3 pages into the book, sitting on that plane, and I just remember sitting in my airplane seat and there was a voice that just came over me. It wasn't my voice, that said, "You are going to through hike the Appalachian Trail next year."
Oh, wow.
And
Like that definitive.
I just kind of stopped and put the book down. And I said, "I don't even know what you're talking about, voice, because I don't even know what the Appalachian Trail is." Honestly, I had no really idea how long it was, where it went, nothing. And I hadn't backpacked any. So anyway, ended up reading the whole book. And I kept thinking, that is the weirdest thing, that I had this sort of voice come over me that I'm going to do this next year. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I went back to my workaday life, but that voice wouldn't, I just couldn't forget about it. And then there was just like this little fire lit inside of me, and I started reading more about the trail. I just decided, I think I'm going to do this. It was the oddest thing. It really was strange how it
Wow.
happened out of the blue
Yeah.
to me. And the more I thought about it and the more I read and the more I started to get ready, the more convicted I was that I was going to do it.
Wow.
So anyway, that's how I got out there. And of course, my family thought I was like crazy and upset that I was quitting this great job. They were worried.
And you were going to go out there alone. Were they worried about your safety?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents were thinking I was going to get into some sort of trouble. And I didn't have a lot of experience outdoors. So I had to start preparing myself for that, which I did start running and getting in shape. But it's hard to really prepare for a journey like that for anybody.
I don't think you can. You can, and then you can't,
Yeah.
right? Like you can be in good health. You can have your wits about you. You
Mhm.
can have, some self-confidence and some knowledge that you'll be able to figure stuff out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't 100% prepare for everything.
So
Yeah.
I went out there with the attitude of, I'm going to try this, and I'm not going to force myself to do it if I'm not having a good time. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a leave of absence from my job, so I ended up having to quit. And that was a huge hurdle for me mentally. I grew up in an environment where you were loyal to your job and you didn't quit a good job. You saved for your retirement and your house and all the things you need, and you didn't go off and do stuff like this. So my background, it was hard. That was a hard step for me to take to do.
Did you have an apartment and whatnot
I
that you had to
did.
give up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to give up my apartment. I sold a lot of my possessions that I didn't need, put the rest of it in storage, saved up money to pay off a few little college debts I had. I probably saved up maybe $5,000, which at the time was adequate to do the trail if you were somewhat conservative. And I just went out there. That was, yeah.
Where did you start? North or south?
I started in the South at Springer Mountain, just very traditionally. I started in late March.
Oh,
I ended up meeting my husband at the time. I was preparing, he was in Brazil. He'd already thru hiked in 1995.
oh, wow.
He was on an online forum answering questions. And that was one of the
Oh,
few places you could get sort of answer quiz, like a, email, a group email forum back then was the thing
right.
to go and like ask questions to the
Yeah.
world. So we got to talking and he offered to drive me to the trail
Oh,
if I
wow.
flew into Huntsville, Alabama. And I told
Okay.
him, I don't know you well enough for that. I'll fly into Atlanta. I'll get myself to the trail. But he had to come back from Brazil to renew his visa, his work visa. And it turns out he's about the same age as me. We had a lot of similar, he went to the same college as me, and I didn't know him, but at that time, anyway, it ended up that his mom called me and invited me to Huntsville
Oh,
to
wow.
she said she was a nice Southern lady, and she said, I would love to have you at our house. And anyway, that's how I ended up coming
That
to
can be endearing and creepy.
it was from him because, he's a guy, but when she called me, she was so sweet and so
Yeah.
welcome.
Oh, good.
So yeah, very nice family. I came and stayed with them, and then Andy drove me from Huntsville. It's a few hours over to Springer Mountain and dropped me off in the middle of the woods. And it was the weirdest feeling to have everything I needed on my back and take off on this 6-month walking journey. It was
Wow,
incredible.
that sounds so amazing.
It was amazing. It was really just the highlight of my life. It really was. And to do it alone, I'm glad I had that because the other trails I've done have not been alone and it's a different experience. So I'm really glad I had the AT solo.
Now, I've heard from other AT hikers that even though you go solo, you meet lots of people on the trail. Did you find that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was a big surprise for me because I assumed that it would be much more of a wilderness experience. And
Yeah.
I had all these ideals that I was going to be out in the woods by myself and with nature. Little did I know it was really more of a social experience than a wilderness experience. But
Interesting.
I have to say, it was what I needed at the time.
Yeah.
Being young and I guess coming from a somewhat sheltered, if you think about it, you grow up, you go to school and you go to college and you go to work. Your spheres of social your social spheres are somewhat limited through all
Mm.
those experiences. And then when you go do something like this, you're meeting people from all walks of life, all ages, from other countries, other parts of the US and the world. And you get to know them at a level that you don't get to know people necessarily in the other parts of your life. You become much more bonded and closer through that experience of being out in the woods. And
I think more vulnerable too. I think
sure,
people are probably more real
yes,
in the woods versus like in that type of situation, whereas at the grocery store or at the workplace, so often you'll ask, "Hi, how are you doing?" And you get just the static, "I'm fine, everything's
yes,
good." And you don't get the realness of it.
yeah.
And I think in a wilderness experience like the Appalachian or any longer distance hike, like any amount of time out in nature, you'll pull off some of those layers, right?
All of the
And you,
constraints are
yeah,
gone.
the constraints,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
It's constraints of time and of demands upon yourself,
Mm,
external demands. You don't have, you just have this sort of basic, you're whittled down to you getting through the day with the stuff you need on your back. It's just a
right.
completely different mindset.
Yeah.
So you definitely get to know people in a different way immediately.
Yes.
It's very quick that you can make good friends and get to know people.
Yeah.
So definitely was more social for me than I planned. And like I said, I needed that. It was good for me.
What was your favorite memory from the Appalachian Trail?
It's very hard to have a favorite in either of those sort of, I mean, there's things I remember from each section. There are places that I love on the trail that I return to still to this day. It's my
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
places, such as the Grayson Highlands in Virginia. I really love that Highlands area. It's gorgeous. It's almost has a Western feel. It's kind of open and there are wild ponies and grassland and
Oh, yeah.
it's a different type of environment. But I loved everything out there. I mean, I always said when I was hiking that I felt that each new day was more beautiful than the day before. And, as I got up north, all of that area was new to me. I had really never been past north of Washington, D.C. So that sort of the White Mountains and Pennsylvania, which everybody warned me was going to be boring and, a drudge because of all the rocks. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing that. New York and New Jersey were really pretty, surprisingly. I remember being very pleased with how beautiful New Jersey was. I loved Connecticut and all the little towns and New England, fall. It was gorgeous. And then getting up into the White Mountains and seeing Mount Katahdin in Maine was spectacular. So it's hard for me to pick a favorite.
That's like me with the Lone Star Hiking Trail. It's like, what's your favorite section? It's like, well, you know what? They all have their unique
That's right.
beauty about it. It's hard to, I have some favorite areas that's easy for me to get to,
Yeah.
but a favorite section. It's hard to pin down. And then, of course, the Appalachian Trail is 20 times the distance. So there's just so much more to it.
And your appreciation for things changes on the trail. I remember days and moments where I was completely immersed in just looking at the vegetation alongside the trail for hours at a time, thinking how beautifully everything just looked. These little weeds and plants and flowers growing right there along the trail, and the mosses. Even at the smaller scale, I felt like I was always entertained and mesmerized by how beautiful everything was.
I love it.
In a heartbeat. I think it's kind of like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. I think the more I've gotten out and hiked, the more I realize there's all this other stuff I want to see, places I want to look at. And I was really fortunate a couple of years ago to be able to hike across England on the Cotswold Way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'd never really been to Europe, and that walk was just as gorgeous as anything over here. And I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed that.
Oh, awesome. How long of a trail is that one?
It's about 100 miles.
It's a nice distance.
It is.
Long enough to get you out there, but not so long that it's going to completely disrupt your life.
That's right. I feel like I would do it again, but I also would like to do the Pacific Crest Trail. I'd like to finish the Continental Divide Trail. My list is very long.
Very awesome. Now, is it you and your husband who do these hikes now? What about your kids? Do you bring your kids on the hikes, or are they?
We've hiked with them. It's very hard, and you're probably going to have some other parents listening who can understand, but
we have a guest behind us.
Well, hello. Yeah, one of my kids just got home from school. But yeah, it's hard to get the time and the logistics with children. We always had planned to do big trips with them and get out and do more than we have. But, we've done 3 or 4 day hikes all over the place with them. We've been taking them all over, a lot more traveling than I did when I was a kid. But as far as getting out and doing long trips, we haven't really had the chance to do a big long trip with them, just because they have school and activities even in the summertime, and it's just hard to get away. Plus we're working and can't just take off and sell everything like we used to. It's not as
right. I know. Sometimes, I have that dream in my head. Oh, let's just sell everything. I don't even want to put it in storage, because the idea of having a storage unit drives me crazy. Yeah. Unless my kids get old enough and then they have a place, and it's like, okay, let me put my stuff there.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out one day.
Well, I asked my kids the other day, I said, do you think we've gotten you out enough? And they both think we've gotten them out plenty. One of my daughters wants to hike the Appalachian Trail when she's the other one is not outdoorsy at all. So we'll see, but at least we've planted the seeds there a little bit.
Let me ask you, how do you feel about that? And how do you feel about her safety? And what are your thoughts on that?
I, of course, as a mom, I'm always worried about her safety. I felt like the trail was very safe, a safe place to be. I felt personally aggravated when people would constantly bring up, aren't you scared? Or how are you protecting yourself and all that. I've taught my kids to be just careful with road crossings, careful around other people, trust your instincts, and hopefully they'll learn that over time, that they need to trust their instincts about people and situations. So I would be slightly worried, but I would definitely want her to do it as she gets, at least into her 20s and out of college. I would be fine with it.
I'm glad that you mentioned the bit about, trust your gut, right? Like, trust your feelings, be aware. Like, situational awareness is such a big part of your self-defense. Like, that's really like the main thing, being aware of your surroundings, and then trusting yourself, right? Trusting your gut, trusting your mind, and, choosing whatever decision you make, whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision, having the mental capacity to be able to make another decision if that first decision wasn't the right one, because sometimes maybe you should have went left instead of going right. And we're not robots. We make the best decisions that we can in the situation. So Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And you're right. It does get a little tiring when people say, well, aren't you scared? Why are you going alone? You know, all the what ifs that could happen. But
Yeah.
honestly, I think like 99.9% of the people are good people. And, you know, the things that could go wrong are those unforeseen things where you twist an ankle.
Yeah.
You know, we have GPS and cell phones now.
Yeah.
You know, 20 years ago, we didn't have that. Now we have an SOS button we can push.
There's a lot more backup safety gear out there now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people on the Appalachian Trail too, and that can be good and bad. You just have to be in a situation and be able to say, I'm comfortable here or I'm not. If I'm not, then know that you can get up and leave and get out of it if you need to, or not get into it in the first place. I never camp near roads, and I was very careful hitchhiking, try not to do that by myself. So, hopefully
Yeah.
those sort of things will avoid most of the risky parts of being out there in the woods.
I like that you brought that up. So your trail name is Nakona? Did I say that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Nakona, and that means the wanderer. So how did you come to adopt that trail name?
That is a famous Comanche Indian tribe in Texas. They lived in the Texas sort of panhandle area, and they were made famous by Quanah Parker and his sort of tribe. He was the son of a white girl who was captive by the Indians when she was, I guess, young. I read the book when I was probably a teenager, and I always thought that the lifestyle that the Indians had was fascinating, that they were plains Indians and they were on horseback and they could just wander all over that whole region if they wanted to really have a home base. And
Right.
so I was on the Appalachian Trail. The tradition is that if you don't pick your own trail name, somebody's going to give you one. There were a couple of names thrown out there I didn't like. I kept thinking about Nakona because of being a Texan and wanting to bring sort of that. I'm a third generation Texan. I wanted to bring some of that with me on the trail, and I love that name. I just thought it was interesting and it fit my attitude and my drive. I was just out there to wonder about the world and see things. And eventually, after a few weeks of being on the trail and not liking the trail names other people were throwing out at me, I decided I'm just going to take this name for myself.
Good for
So
you. And still, after all these years, you still like it.
I do. Yeah. It just makes me feel warm inside when I hear somebody call me by that, because it's not very often anymore that
Right.
I hear someone call me Nicole.
You'll have to put it as your YouTube handle or something.
That's right.
One of the Wanderer. Very cool. So you also hiked the PCT, is that right?
That's right. We attempted it in the year 2000. So my husband and I, it was before we were married, we were still dating, and he had had a dream of also hiking the PCT. So we got out there, and I unfortunately got sick in the high Sierras with what turned out to be high altitude pulmonary edema. It can happen anywhere above 10,000 or 12,000 feet. And so we were not careful. We were young and dumb, and we were camping too high at night. And I'd had a cold. I guess it sort of set me up for it. And after a few nights, I started coughing, and it wouldn't go away. And then I developed shortness of breath. And then one night on the trail, I woke up coughing, couldn't sleep, and I started losing feeling in my fingers and toes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I told my husband, or my at the time boyfriend, and he said, let's get you out of here. So the next day, we found a side trail, and it was really all I could do to get out of the mountains that day. It was almost too late. I was on my own feet, walking very slow, and he had to carry my pack for me. So he had his pack in my pack, and he got me out. Once I got down to lower altitude and I could breathe better, I was okay. And I went to a doctor, and they said, you're done. You can't go back to altitude for a while. So we did not finish. We got about 800 miles of it in 2000. And then we determined we had to go back and finish it. But when we went back, we started over. We got married in February of 2004. And by April, we were back on the trail at the start of the PCT. And then that year, we hiked all the way to Canada.
Oh, wow. How long did that take?
It was 6 months.
6 months?
Just about to the day. Yeah.
Now, what was it like? Like I don't know a lot about the PCT, but someone was telling about there's like a burn area or a scar area. Where would that be?
There are lots of burns all along the Pacific Crest Trail.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, starting in Southern California and all the way up into Washington, all three states, even Oregon, they've all had burns. Much more has burned since I was hiking there. So I'm sure that I'd probably see a lot more burn scars today if I went back out there, is what I hear.
Gotcha. What is it like hiking through a burn scar? I know what it's like on the Lone Star hiking trail when you hike through different areas that have been burned. And so I'm just wondering what your feeling is when you walk through a burned area.
It can be a feeling of both desolation and very austere and sad. And it can also be interesting because you can see life popping back out of the ashes.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's always struck me out west, and especially up in the mountains and up north, the further north you go, it's true, how slowly those areas recover as compared to down south in Texas and, where I live here. Those areas up there get so little chance to grow in the summer because the growing season is shorter and
Probably because of the heat and the moisture.
They don't get as much rain and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it might take years and years for a burn scar to start to heal over. So that's kind of sad. Yeah.
It's interesting. It makes me think of like volcanic areas, right? So when a volcano has been active, like I can only think of Hawaii and Iceland, where, the lava has taken over fields and fields. And, eventually there's life, but it just takes a long, long time.
Yes.
Like generations of time. Very desolate. And it is beautiful to see, the small plants starting to poke through where you think that there shouldn't be any life, but life always finds a way, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Let me see. I'm looking through my notes. So we talked about the Pacific Crest Trail. We talked about the Appalachian Trail. How about this one? Out of all your trail experiences, do you have one moment that stands out as life-changing or unforgettable?
That is a hard question for anybody who's done a long trail. I thought about this long and hard, and I have a lot of moments that stand out. And for anybody who's done a long trip, I feel almost all of them I've talked to, it's almost like you have flashbacks that go on for years and years. And even to this day, I'll be back in a moment on the trail that was so memorable that I can still feel it and smell it almost and sense what it was like to be in that moment. But, I remember these moments where, especially on the Appalachian Trail when I was alone, things are maybe more intense when you're alone, your memories. But I remember strange or wondrous things that would happen. One night walking down the trail and seeing an owl on a limb above me and stopping to look at the owl just a few feet from me. And we just looked at each other for a long, long moment. And then I just thought, well, it's all worth it to be here in this moment and have this owl just 5 feet from me, watching me and looking at me. And it was just a quiet night in the woods with just the two of us there. I was going down the trail off a side path to get water by myself, and I had my water bags, and I turned a corner, and there was a big open meadow, and I could see a black bear in the middle of the meadow eating grass like a horse, just pulling up grass, eating. And I just stopped. I froze, and I watched this bear. Of course, your instincts kind of kick in when you're face to face with the bear and you think, should I say something or should I just get out of here? What should I do? And I just remember seeing this beautiful bear in this gorgeous green meadow in the mountains, and it was so quiet, and I could hear him eating. And it was like I had eavesdropped into this other world for a second that no one else was there. It was just me and this bear. And I don't even think the bear ever knew I was there. At least I never saw him react to me. And eventually I backed away quietly and left. And of course, went and told my husband I was so excited. And we went back and he was gone.
Wow. That sounds so exciting.
I remember just these moments by myself. There were all these wonderful moments laughing with friends under the stars. And I remember being up late at campgrounds, just cutting up, laughing, and having a good time with my friends, or getting through difficult things with a friend who was injured or someone who was sick, and just moments like that. But one day I remember walking through a big open area on the Appalachian Trail, and it was a hard day for me for some reason. I think I was tired or hot or lonely or something was bothering me, and I was just struggling. And I could see midway through this big field that there was a post with a white blaze on it, which indicated the trail went right through the meadow. And I could see something red on top of the post far away. And as I got closer, I'm hiking along, and it was a hot day, and I'm by myself. And this is nowhere near trailheads or other people. I hadn't seen anyone all day. And I got up closer and I kept thinking, that looks like a Coke, a can of Coke. And as I got closer and closer, I could see it was a can of Coke. And I started thinking, what if it was not opened? What if it was cold? And as I got right up to it, I could see it had beads of sweat on it.
Oh my goodness.
I reached up for it, and it was a cold, like it had just come out of the refrigerator, Coke. And I looked around and there was no one. So I took my pack off and I sat there and I was just in wonderment, like, who could have left this cold Coke here? Is
Wow.
it me? So after about 10 minutes, I took the Coke. I said, this has got to be for me. So I had my Coke. I sat there, I had a break, and packed my Coke can out. And I thought that was the most amazing trail magic I've ever had. There was no note, no nothing. It was just sitting there waiting for me. So it
That's
really
so
made my
awesome.
day. But it's little moments like that where things happen that you just can't, you'll never forget the magic of it, that it was almost too much to believe, or that it was worth everything
Right.
there in that moment. So
That's so cool. That's
yeah.
it. And those are the things you can't plan for, right?
No.
Like you can plan as much as you want to plan. You can have lists and weights and everything else, but just the magic of a can of Coke sitting there after a hard climb, right? That's beautiful. I was going to ask you, was there any magical moments on the trail that stand out? I bet you that's a pretty top one.
Yeah, I remember seeing a meteor coming down in the Mojave Desert, and we were night hiking through there in a group of people. All of us saw it, and we were just amazed. I remember seeing Mount Katahdin for the first time in Maine, how gorgeous it was with the fall colors. I had a coyote sneak into my tent when I was on the
Oh,
Crest Trail, and while I was up late writing in my journal, and we had a little moment looking at each other before he's kind of slunk away. I remember walking into a town in Virginia with a friend. We were night hiking into town late at night, and we stopped for a break, and we looked around and turned off our headlamps just to kind of save batteries. And we realized we were surrounded by glowworms glowing all around us. And it was just some random spot in Virginia. So things like that will stick with me the rest of my life.
so beautiful. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. I love it. Let me ask you this. So for women, especially over the age of, let's say 40, who are curious about doing long distance hiking, what advice would you give them to help them start preparing for their journey?
So my advice would be to keep in mind that you're probably going to be more scared and worried and anxious about starting or being on the trail while you're at home on your couch. That's probably going to be the scariest part of your hike. It's just all the worry and stuff that goes into the planning and the thinking about it. But once you're out there, I promise it won't be as scary as you think or other people have told you. So definitely don't let fear be an obstacle to getting out. And then I would just recommend that anyone who's interested in long distance hiking start to do little exploration hikes on their own. Do an overnight, do a 3-day hike, and then maybe build up to a week if you have time. Definitely get your trail feet and trail legs under you. But you really, like we talked about earlier, it's very hard to prepare fully for a trip like that. It's more important, I think, to go out with an open mind and just try it. You can always decide you don't like it, but if you don't try it, you'll never know. So I would recommend just going with an attitude of, this might be amazing. Let's see what it's like. An open mind. And of course, there's all kinds of, we could talk about financial logistics and saving up. There's, physical preparations and all that. But really, it comes down to whether you are willing to take the leap and try something different that seems maybe extreme, but my experience is it's worth it.
It's worth it,
Yeah.
definitely. And let's talk for a minute about the essentials. Like, what kinds of things would you put in your backpack? Like, you're an experienced backpacker now. You've been doing many miles on the trail. And I know I've talked to other people about this. Some people pack their fears. So they'll add extra things in because they're afraid of being cold or they're afraid of not being able to start a fire. So they have like 10 different ways to start a fire. So what would you say are your essentials that you take with you on every single hike?
It's not. And I have gear lists in my book. You can find them online. I probably couldn't sit here and give you the full list off the top.
Right. There
There's
can be a lot.
but my advice about gear and making sure you have what you need is to do those sort of test hikes and get out overnight, 2 or 3 nights or a week. That is where you're going to figure out what you need and hone down what you're comfortable with because everybody's a little different. Yeah, my husband carries a little bit different stuff than I do. So he's comfortable with what he likes, and I don't, some of the stuff he carries, I don't want or need. He likes to have soap and a scrubby to clean his pots and pans. I use leaves and sand, and I'm happy with that. I do like shampoos. I like to wash my hair. So, regarding comfort and fears, I guess it comes down to being flexible and testing your gear a little at a time. But of course, I would recommend doing your research and trying to stay as light as possible, especially for women. The enjoyment of your trip, especially the longer the trip and the harder it is, the more it relates back to how much you're carrying, how much weight.
Absolutely. What do you like to have as a pack weight? What do you try to stay under?
I would recommend a dry weight, that's without food and water, of 15 pounds or less if you're doing a long trail.
Yeah.
Now, that's going to maybe change a little if the weather's very cold or you're far up north or you're way up in the high Sierras. You may have to add a few pounds of winter gear to that to keep comfortable. Definitely hats, gloves, and jackets. I know there's people who have done it with less, but I would say that's about my personal goal is 15 pounds. And the way I would accomplish that is to spend the money on getting a really light sleeping bag that's high quality. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on a backpack anymore. I think there's some very affordable lightweight options, but you're going to want to put a little bit of your money into getting a lightweight bag and tent so that your essentials are lower weight. Yeah.
That's great advice because some of it, you can do without, right?
Mhm.
But, you have to have a tent and you have to have some sort of shelter and you need some sort of sleeping bag. And you're right. It needs to be, to lower your pack weight, it needs to be as light as you can go. So that's where the majority of your money is going to go.
Yeah.
I think
And
so.
then you can get away with cheaper options for stoves.
Yeah.
A lot of PCT thru-hikers will make their own stoves out of a Coke can and use rubbing alcohol or heat or whatever to cook on. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of options for that are low cost. But your sleeping bag, you're probably going to need to spend a little money on that, and your tent, things like that.
Yeah. Now, do you have any other books out there other than the Lone Star Hiking Trail book, or is that?
I have thought about writing one for the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama. That's
Oh,
another
yeah.
kind of short trail in the south.
Yeah.
But I haven't had the time in my life to do that with kids, and we'll see, maybe down the road.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if the Ouachita Trail has a guidebook. I'm not sure.
They do. I've actually hiked little sections of that trail before.
Have you?
I think it's a guy named Tim Ernst who
Okay.
he used to self-publish his own guidebooks years ago.
Oh, nice.
So I think they're probably still out in circulation.
Very cool. So when you're researching doing a trail, do you recommend that someone go and find a good quality guidebook? Or do you think now with the internet, do you think there's good information, or do you think it's probably better if it's been put in print and put out there? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I really like having paper. I
Yeah.
like to have a paper map with me, and I like guidebooks that are in print. But on the other hand, when I did the Cotswold Way, I caved in and I had an app that would even alert me if I was getting off trail, which I thought was overkill. But that's the way that the guides who ran the trail there, they didn't really have another option. So I went with it and I was pleasantly surprised. I could put my phone in airplane mode, so really wasn't distracted by it too much, and then still keep it in my pocket and just hike. And then when I would get off trail, it would start letting me know, which
Oh, okay.
actually happened more than I thought. So I try to be flexible and I try to be
Right.
open-minded. So if it turns out that it's a better, more efficient thing to have it on your phone, I just feel like I don't want to be tied to charging my device while I'm in the woods and worrying about solar panels and all the business with that. It's just a personal preference.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see the difference between hiking with a map, like a paper map. You get to an intersection or a spot and, figuring out which way are you supposed to go.
It's more foolproof for sure.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
really can't go wrong. At least have that as a backup, especially if you're out alone, if you're doing a longer hike or you're in an area that's large or unfamiliar. If you get into trouble, your map is going to be what gets you out of it in a lot of cases. So you really should have. In fact, when we were hiking the Continental Divide Trail, which is a much more serious kind of endeavor, I had also the big topo maps that I'd cut out for each section, just in case we had to bail off the trail and get to a road somewhere that might be a day or more off the actual Continental Divide Trail. I was worried that we would not know where to go because, you can get into trouble out there in some
in
of the
wilderness. Well, especially would that have been after you had your incident with the pulmonary edema?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
after.
So yeah, if you're out there and you have to get out, how are you going to get out?
And I saw other injured hikers go through
Did you?
having to get off trail like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's important. Definitely. Okay, let's move on to rapid fire questions.
sure.
Okay. So we'll just keep them short and playful, just whatever comes to your mind. What is your favorite go-to snack?
I love to have Fritos corn chips on the trail. I love them on the trail.
Nice. What is your favorite piece of gear that you wouldn't leave home without?
Probably my Lecky hiking poles, which I have had I got them on a clearance rack at an outfitter in Houston before the Appalachian Trail, and I've had them on every trail since.
Really? Never lost them? Never broke them?
Well, some pieces have been replaced on them years, but the main poles are the same ones. So I still have the
Very
same
cool.
trusty poles.
Why do you call them your lucky poles?
Oh, Lecky, Leki, the brand name.
Do you prefer mountains or forests?
Mountains.
Have you ever gotten a trail song stuck in your head? And if so, which one?
I have not gotten a trail song stuck in my head, but I get trails stuck in my head.
Oh, really?
I definitely get obsessed with trails and can't stop thinking about them. But no, I can't think of a specific song.
No.
I'm sure it's happened, but I have no memory of that now after everything, all the years that have passed since I've been on the long trail. So
Gotcha. Do you have like a mantra that you'll say to yourself? Like, let's say if you're going up a really steep hill or you're climbing a mountain and you're just trying to get from point A to point B and it's one foot in front of the other. Is there something that you say in your head to help you get through that section?
So I think the longer I'm on the trail, the stranger things will pop up from long ago, like old songs and poems or rhymes or things I'd memorized in the past would pop up. What they were, I can't remember now, but I do have memories of strange, odd, like commercial jingles and strange things popping in randomly. And then a lot of times I just remember not thinking a lot of anything, just zoned out and just being in the moment. And that's something that's harder to do when I go out for a day hike now. My mind is just cluttered with stuff. But when you're out on the trail for a long period of time, it seems that your mind will slowly unclutter itself and then it'll start dredging up these strange things from the past or odd stuff, and you'll have these weird thoughts. I do know that other hikers have told me the same, that they have a period of sort of feeling like this weight off of them, of suddenly they sort of run out of things to think about and they're more in the moment than they ever had been in their life before. And that's a
Wow.
good feeling. Yeah.
If you could hike anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would you go?
Tough question, but I guess I'd have to say is the way I'm feeling right now, getting over this cold, I'd want to be on a beach in Maui,
Nice.
a nice
Yeah.
chair under an umbrella. But when it comes to real hiking, I'd love to visit Patagonia.
Oh, yeah.
I'd
Nice.
love to see New Zealand or
Yeah.
Tasmania. If you could take me anywhere, those are some remote places that are hard to get to that I would love
Yeah.
to see.
Very cool.
Mhm.
Nice. In one word to describe how you feel on the trail, how do you feel when you're on the trail? Just in one word.
Free.
Nice.
If I had more than one word, it would be full of wonder.
That, and hence your trail name,
Yeah. Well, that is kind of
Hakona.
a play on words. That's right.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on, Karen. Is there anything that you want to add or chat about that I didn't mention, or that you had a burning desire to share, or are we good?
I would just, encourage people to get out and chase their dreams and not be afraid to try new things. And the trail has been a magical part of my life, and I feel like I have a secret gift or a sort of a jewel or a gem that I know it's always out there waiting for me to go back to. But I feel so blessed that I had the chance to do that, make those friends and connections with people, and have my sense of wonder in the world and other human beings renewed by that experience. It'll always be the highlight, of my life to have had that, other than having my children. I can't think of another time that I'd rather go back to than be out on the trail again. Hopefully, I'll maybe get a chance to do something like that again. I definitely would love for everyone to have had that experience and realize the happiness that you can have when you have so little in the way of possessions, how happy you can actually be, that it's not really tied to material things, and you really can't understand it till you're out there experiencing it. So definitely recommend people get out for even short trips, even if they can't get out for longer ones. There's a lot of,
Mm,
like the Lone Star Trail, there's a
right.
lot of options. There's a lot of, shorter adventures. For instance, the lady doing 2 weeks at a time,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
she did 2 weeks every year I think she picked her favorite time of year, which was September. She wanted to be on
yeah,
the trail in September. She found that was the best time of year to be out there. And yeah, every year for 20 years, she went out there and did the trail. Yeah, that was she was on a mission, and that was the best way that she could do it for her situation.
yeah.
Now, you did bring up earlier about financial, and I should almost I don't know who I would have on, but it would be great to have like 3 or 4 people on chatting about, how did they do it financially ready, and what are the different things you need to do to be able to do that sort of thing. And I think
Yeah,
everybody's situation is different.
it
Like,
is.
like
Yeah.
what do you do with your possessions? What do you do with your, like there's just
Mhm.
so much stuff.
There is a lesson I learned early that possessions can be a limit on your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have responsibilities that you can't get away from, like kids and pets. That's different. But when it comes to material possessions, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of storage options now that I don't think that we used to have as much. It seems like there's a storage place on every corner.
Right.
But just being out of debt, they talk about financial freedom, but
Mhm.
if you don't have debt, you have a lot more options with what you can do with your life and different situations you can live in. And I know for me, I've thought a lot about in retirement, possibly living in different parts of the world or country for a year, half a year at a time, and exploring that area. Having the financial freedom means you can do that. So
Yeah, and sometimes it means paring down those possessions. And what is really important? Is a possession important, or is it having that freedom to be able to go for 6 months if you want to go for 6 months?
you would be surprised at how easy it is to do that and how happy they are. Sometimes you get so used to the stuff that you feel it's permanent in your life, but it doesn't have to be.
Karen, thank you so much for joining us today on the Just Hyke podcast and for sharing your wisdom and passion for the Lone Star Hiking Trail and other trails. It's really been an honor having you here. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss a trail story or training tip. Leave us a review and share the podcast with your hiking friends. It really helps us grow this community. Until next time, remember, every step on the trail is a step towards strength, clarity, and adventure. Happy hiking!